What's going on today, YouTubers? Welcome to another edition of Walking Reviews. Today we're going to be taking a look at, I'm not 100% sure if it's a mid-tech or a production. My feeling is that it's probably a mid-tech, but I'm sure you guys can let me know for sure in the comments. So this is the Arius flipper by Koenig. And Koenig really rose to popularity, I guess, about a year and a half ago with the release of a knife that used no hardware. It was just a knife that was fitted together with dovetail construction, and you could take it apart, put it back together without any kind of tools whatsoever. So subsequently they released this model, which is a flipper, obviously, titanium frame lock flipper. And I believe this is pretty popular too. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe this one went pretty quick. Although it may have been like a limited quantities type deal. But let's go ahead and jump into the specs before I get too far ahead of myself. 3.5-inch blade of CTS XHP, which is Carpenter Steel's top of the line super steel. It is a drop point configuration. You can see with a pretty prominent tops wedge, very thin, like hollow ground tops wedge. And then you can see it's got the thumb hole opener here with a milled track leading into that, which when you're actually deploying the blade, comes in pretty handy. Sorry for the background noise, guys. There's some landscaping going on in the area that I'm at, so if it gets too loud, I mean, I'll watch the video before I post it, but if it gets too loud, I'll just redo the video, I guess. So as far as branding goes, we just have Koenig in fairly subdued lettering on the show side here. Lock side of the blade has no writing or anything like that, just bare. It does have a pretty substantial stonewash to the blade. Pretty damn awesome at hiding wear. These really kind of rough stonewash finishes, they tend to hold up the best for like hard use. So this knife is a guest blade from a friend of mine, but he is not the first owner as far as I recall from what he was telling me. This knife still has a pretty usable edge on it, and it's been through at least 2 owners, so that's probably the CTS XHP there showing its strength. I mean, it's not super razor sharp, but it's still plenty sharp to be used for just about anything you would need to use a pocket knife for. So really impressed that it's made it through 2 owners. I mean, obviously I don't know how hard they were using it, but they you can tell they were using it. There's definitely wear marks on the blade, so it's been used, and it still has a pretty damn keen edge for going through 2 owners. So it is a hollow grind. It's kind of hard to show with that severe stonewash, but decently thin behind the edge from a knife that's got fairly thick blade stock. So like I said, this milling in the blade, it does help with finger positioning when you're going to open the knife. I do like that they included that for ease of use. I think it also looks nice too, but this is a pretty substantial knife. Blade length of 3.5 inches, overall length of about 8.5 inches. Your handle length is just under 5 inches. So it's a pretty substantial knife here. This is larger than I probably would carry myself. But man, does that feel substantial. It really is one of those hand-filling knives. It's contoured titanium handle scales here, or slabs, with a sort of a distressed bronze wash. So it's got like a light bronze anodization and then that heavy stone wash to match the blade. I do love this. Some people might not care for the way that looks. Sorry, you can see it's getting a little dirty from being in my pocket, but some people might not care for the way that looks. I think it's been incorporated pretty well into the handle here, but it makes taking the knife apart a million times easier and putting it back together. Having that little place for this screw to seat is just, it makes things so much easier when you're talking about actual use of a knife, because you can just take it apart without having to worry about this side. You can see the construction is 2 body screws and then obviously the pivot screw here. It is an internal blade stop. Let's see if I can show it to you. It doesn't want to be seen. It does not want to be seen, but it is an internal blade stop. You can see it's got that extended, maybe quarter length back spacer with the lanyard hole there. It's also got some additional milling done to the back spacer. Pocket clip, not the deepest carry, but certainly performs its duty admirably as far as pocket clip goes. I like the way that the milling in the pocket clip matches sort of the lock bar cutout there. Pretty easy in and out of the pocket. You do have a lock bar insert here, which is responsible for the lockup. Lockup is right at about 20% maybe. So this does run on caged bearings. The action is quite smooth. You can see it basically drops closed. It doesn't have a super strong detent, but it's enough that you don't really need to put any effort or thought into flipping it. It's not one of those knives where you need to preload, you know, to really get it to fire out at all. You can just be pretty casual about flipping it without preloading it, and it's still going to flip out decently well. But obviously they had to make, Jesus, I cannot speak English lately. They had to make considerations, obviously, for the that finger hole opener, the thumb hole opener, which you can spidey flick really well. So you can see here the centering is dead on. Beautiful centering on this blade. I've had some knives lately that they've been off just a little bit either way, and it's not something that should bother me, but it does. Especially when you get into knives that cost quite a bit of money. I mean, you would expect that type of thing to be thought of. You can see here on the handle scales, all of the edges have been rounded. So, extraordinarily comfortable knife in the hand. Ergonomically, you can't ask for more. I mean, with a bigger knife, usually it's going to be a little bit better ergonomically because it can fill out your hand. But this one is done so well. I love this exaggerated size of the groove here for your fingers. I love the contouring. You can definitely feel it when it's sitting in your hand, how contoured it is. This is definitely a knife that would be for heavier duty tasks. It doesn't have a really like a cute edge for really fine cutting tasks. I mean, I'm sure it could hold up admirably, but it's not going to be like maybe like a Boker Urban Trapper, which is like made for really small and light stuff. This is more of what I would consider a heavier, maybe even if you're into that tactical style pocket knife. Another little detail here you can see is the pattern milled out for the lock bar, so it catches your thumb. A lot of really nice details have been included in this knife, and that's kind of what made me think that this is probably a mid-tech. that and the price. These, when they were from the retailer, these sold for around $5.50. Now on the secondary market, I couldn't tell you. I could not tell you what these go for on the secondary market. As far as finding them at a dealer, that might be kind of tough, just because I don't think anyone still has these. These were made in pretty limited quantities, like I was saying earlier. So I don't think any retailers are going to have these again, but if this is the style of knife that would tickle your fancy, and if you can find it for a decent price on the secondary market, I would say jump on it, because the quality is absolutely there. It might not be the flashiest flipper, but this thing is put together like an absolute rock. It is, it's got almost like clock-like precision. Everything has been, everything has been addressed. All the edges are rounded for comfort. Anything you could think of as far as functionality has been thought of. As far as this milling for the lock bar, the insert, the caged bearings, the extended backspacer. I love the way they did this pivot screw here. So definitely a knife that puts functionality at the forefront, but certainly hasn't forgotten about the way that the knife looks. This finish is going to wear exceptionally well. This isn't going to be the type of knife that if you get a scratch on it, it's going to be noticeable. So certainly something that that you would want to put to good use. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video of the Koenig Arius. Thank you to the gentleman who lent this to me for the review. It was awesome getting to hold and try a Koenig knife. I still need to find one of their original run of the knife with no hardware, but it was really cool just to get to see. You can tell that Koenig is the company that made a knife that needed no hardware, because this knife, even with hardware, you can tell they put precision at the forefront. So, alright guys, take it easy.